Hey, ¿qué tal amigos? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with another video this week about some of the things that have caught my attention in both the local and international press about Spain over the last 7 days or so. And the first thing that caught my attention this week was an article online on the BBC News website, and the headline was "A Brexit Dilemma, Spain or Scotland?" And apparently there are a lot of Scottish people who reside in Spain or live in Spain, and they're worried about the possible complications to their lives because of Brexit. And it says here that it's easy to understand why so many Scots settle on the Costa Blanca with its sandy beaches, all-day breakfasts, and the promise of sunshine 300 days a year. Apparently there's a lot of people from Scotland that spend 6 months here in Spain and 6 months in Scotland. They like to get a bit of both worlds. The article calls these people swallows, and apparently there are 65,000 Britons registered as residents in the Alicante region. And they're asking themselves, will Brexit change my plans for a life in the sun? And we can also see here how many people from Britain are officially living in Spain. And we have that comparison that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago as well, whereas back in 2012 there were nearly 400,000 Britons in Spain. Now there are only 240,000 Britons living in Spain apparently. 65,000 in Alicante, 8,000 between the age of 16 and 44, 18,000 between the ages of 45 and 64, and 34,000 65 plus, as I said, in Alicante. And they talked to a couple of long-term residents from Scotland that are living here in Spain. One of the people interviewed is Agnes Miller. She grew up in Edinburgh but has spent more than 3 decades in Spain, and she's worried that a lot of British teachers are going to lose their freedom of movement. Let's have a look at her interview.
My real and immediate concerns about Brexit on my business are that British teachers are going to lose their freedom of movement. So they're not going to be able to come here to work as quickly and as easily and as inexpensively as they can do now, and that is going to impact a lot on my flexibility as a business.
They also interviewed a Scottish bicycle shop businessman who's been living in Quesada for 10 years, and he's now in the process of applying for residency in Spain. Now, this is one of the points that I wanted to highlight here, and it is how many British people live in Spain but don't apply for residency. So people don't commit. One person here in the article says that there are 300,000 people officially living in Spain, but he estimates that there are up to 800,000 Britons living in Spain. So obviously 500,000 Britons living here that are not registered. And really, to register, it's not difficult to do, and the benefits are enormous. So for example, if you register, you're able to request the regularisation of residence permits and work permits. You're able to access municipal welfare services, for example, social assistance. You're able to get administrative documents such as social security. You can take out your driver's licence and regulate your driver's licence depending on the country of origin. So it means that you can swap your licence over easily. And you can also register kids in elementary schools, high schools and universities. So I can only see benefits for registering. But I'm surprised that there are so many people that don't do it. For me, it was compulsory for me to register on the local census. I had to go through the paperwork, and it was not difficult. I think I just had to provide my passport. I think I also had to prove where I was living, and basically that was it. And it was a fairly simple process, and the benefits for the region that you're living in, as I said before, are enormous because a lot of the services in those areas depend on the number of residents living there. So if there is a big foreign population living in a certain area but they're not registered at the local council, they're putting strain on local services, local transport services, rubbish collection services and other services that the local council is not getting money for, even though there are quite a lot of people living there. So if you are living in Spain and you are from the UK and not registered, go through the process. It's easy to do, and it will probably help your situation when Brexit is finalised. Now, the next thing that caught my attention this week was an article in El Confidencial, and the title was "The Urban Chaos Spreads Throughout Spain After the Boom." And apparently the real estate developers and promoters are criticizing the fact that there's not enough free land for their developments. Local administrations are not willing to release the land because they don't want to go back to the problems that they had back in 2008. But this lobby group, this real estate developers lobby group, is pressuring the local councils, and we can see here a map of all the areas where they have trouble getting land. We can see that in Asturias, in Santander, in Galicia, Catalunya, Castellón, Murcia, Marbella, in Cádiz, and in the Canary Islands. They have trouble to get the necessary land that they need in order to satisfy the apparent demand. And they're blaming a 7% increase in 6 months on this reluctance, let's say, of the local councils to give them enough land. Now, I find this quite ironic because I saw another article in a paper this week about a Spanish photographer who was awarded the DJI Drone Photographer of the Year award because of a photo documentary that he did where he went around to all of the abandoned real estate projects in Spain, photographed them from above, and he's gone back again now 10 years later, and a lot of these unfinished developments sit in exactly the same state as they did 10 years ago. So on one hand, we get articles saying that there's not enough land and that real estate developers are suffering as a result of that. And on the other hand, we get this drone photographer who's gone back and photographed these same pieces of land where empty abandoned projects sit. Now, here where I live, there are a couple of these projects, but they have been started again 10 years later. They went back and they're redeveloping the abandoned houses and flats. But we can see here that there are an estimated 3.4 million houses standing empty and deserted throughout Spain. They litter the landscape. So again, as I said, ironic that we get the 2 points of view. People complaining that there's not enough land, and a photographer filming all of these abandoned projects that just sit there empty on the landscape. And the final thing that caught my attention this week was the capturing of Carles Puigdemont in Germany. The Spanish government put out a European arrest warrant. Mr. Puigdemont was in Finland. He was giving a speech. Somebody tipped him off that this arrest warrant had gone through. Instead of hopping on a plane and most likely getting arrested at the airport, he decided to drive back to Belgium from Finland, quite a long trip, I believe. And when he crossed the border into Germany, the German police arrested him. This set off a number of protests in Catalonia, and another prominent Catalan leader also had to turn herself in Edinburgh, Clara Ponsatí. She is now apparently on bail, and of course the Spanish government want these fugitives to come back here and face trial. But apparently it's not going to be that easy. I read somewhere during the week that perhaps Mr. Puigdemont will ask for political asylum in Germany. The Germans are not clear whether they will send him back to Spain or not. Public opinion at the moment says that 51% of Germans are against his extradition back to Spain. Apparently the radical left and the radical right groups oppose his extradition, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Mr. Puigdemont, of course, has been Spain's #1 fugitive for about the last 6 months, and apparently what happened was Spanish police put a tracking device under the car so they knew exactly where he was. I suppose that the Spanish police have been tracking every movement Mr. Puigdemont has made over the last 6 months or so, so they waited for him to cross the border, tipped off the German police, and they had no other option but to arrest him. So that is all I have to speak about this week. Any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Remember to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll see you in next week's news review. Hasta luego.